real quick. Um, Thanks, Laura, for doing that introduction, and thank you for everyone for being here. As Laura said, my name is San Hong, the founder of ONTRAC. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little background on my story and really how ONTRAC came to be, as well as a short demo. And then, I know Laura said we're going to do a kind of a short fireside chat where I can kind of address any questions at the end. Laura, can you see the screen share?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as Laura mentioned, I've been an entrepreneur for probably about 15 years now. This is my first travels into the tech space. But just kind of a short story on kind of how ONTRAC came to be. About 2018, I had kind of two life-changing events. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail here, but just the short version, the Cliff Notes version is number one is I had a startup that I raised about $800,000 for that had kind of a long, drawn-out, miserable failure. It was highest of highs, lowest of lows, but it really kind of took a toll emotionally on me. And then about 5 or 6 months after that, my father, who I hadn't spoken to in about a decade, he passed away before I could go out and see him. And so really those two things so close together put me in a state of depression for a period of time. And just mentally, I really forced myself to not stay in that state for too long. So my way of getting out of that was to focus on, okay, what's going to make me happy? And so for myself, I kind of identified three main areas that I wanted to focus on. So kind of getting, physically healthier, getting financially healthier, and then also just managing my time a little bit better. And then, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and with what happened with my dad, one of the things that was really important to me was making sure I didn't allow my relationship with her to deteriorate to the point that it did with my dad. So those are kind of the things that I did. And so I set life goals for myself across those domains. I looked for an app in the App Store, and I didn't find what I was looking for. Primarily, a couple areas that I was disappointed in was the fact that, number one, progress tracking across all the goals were very manual. I knew that was going to be problematic for me. I wouldn't do it if it was very manual. And then number two was it really, they didn't provide an actionable plan for each life goal I was going after. They just kind of asked for what my goal was and just said, hey, update us as you make progress. And I realized just from my own knowledge and my own experience, that wasn't the recipe for achieving the life goals I was going after. So that's really what the motivation was for ONTRAC. So right now we're actually 2 weeks away. I have the UI designer and developers on the call, so I'm gonna hold them to the fire a little bit. But so yeah, we're roughly, our target date is September 1st to start beta testing, and we've got 400 people on our wait list right now. And so we're going to beta test with a core group of about 30, the number's growing a little bit, but roughly 30, give or take, people to start beta testing with. So what you're seeing is the wireframe, and the actual app itself is going to be fairly close. So the onboarding process is going to be a little bit different than we have here. So I'm not going to focus on that right now. What I will say briefly is, the end goal of ONTRAC is to help people live happier lives. So that onboarding process is actually going to be a 5-question survey. And it's it's exactly the satisfaction with life scale, which is SWLS, which is a 5-question, really simple survey that's been validated in research to be a very accurate yet flexible measure of subject well-being, which is probably the most objective measure we can have of happiness. So then we'll take measures throughout to look at, as people progress, are they improving their subject well-being? As far as ONTRAC itself, there's two main components. The first part is what we call Smart Tracks. And Smart Tracks is really a unique content medium. So it's almost like an Audible or like an iTunes podcast, but specifically for life goal content. And so what is a Smart Track going to do? Number one is a Smart Track is going to guide a user towards an actual SMART goal. So something that's quantitative and time-based primarily. Number two is it's going to break that bigger goal into smaller time-based milestones. The idea behind that is setting the user up for small wins, which helps motivate them and keeps them engaged, as opposed to focusing on the larger long-term goals. And then finally, actually providing a actionable, evidence-based list of tasks that will automatically schedule for the user. And so a couple things to kind of point out, as we found, smart tracks is kind of the harder part for people to understand. So each goal is going to have its own smart track. So kind of what we have right now is eating healthier, paying off debt, things like that. But it's also important to keep in mind that each goal can have multiple smart tracks. So a quick example is paying off debt. You can pay off debt through what's called the snowball method, which is paying the lowest balance first, or you can pay off debt with the avalanche method. There's more methods, but those are the two main ones. The avalanche method, which is paying the highest interest rate first. So the idea behind it is there's multiple ways to achieve a goal. And through this flexibility of smart tracks, we can provide unique content in partnership with subject matter experts to provide those different ways. And so users can select the smart track that best fits their experience, their personality, and their specific needs. And so, that's kind of the first part. The second part is progress tracking, automated progress tracking. So we're going to have a series of integrations through that you would set up here. So these have actually changed a little bit, but generally you would set the integrations up here. And so we're going to use things like Bluetooth devices, wearables, financial data aggregation, rescue time, if you're familiar with that, to track all these life goals across physical health, personal finance, and time management. And so one of the end results, let me go back one quick. So actually there's kind of the library of smart tracks you would find here. So you could actually kind of look through and see what smart tracks would be, along the lines of what you're trying to accomplish. But as far as the automated progress tracking, kind of the end result that a lot of people enjoy are these high-level dashboards across health, personal finance, and time management. And what we did was we really wanted to keep it very clean and easy to use. So we didn't want to get into a lot of details. There's a lot of dashboards out there that have so much detail that it almost becomes, it lacks the ability to have actionable insights. So, focusing on calories in, calories out, how much water are you drinking, sleep, what's your caloric breakdown, and then across your financial health, money in, money out, how are you actually spending your money? And then across time, how much time are you spending on your phone? How much time are you spending driving? Exercising. Some of these things we're going to layer on additional integrations down the road so we can track more and more. I think time will have the most gaps in our MVP, but I think that's also, potentially one of the most beneficial dashboards out there. So a lot of people really enjoy that. And then down the line, we are looking to add some AI to provide actionable insights and almost kind of provide an audit feature where you can look at historical data and kind of provide a list of priorities for that particular person based on, how others in that particular situation have fared and what priorities have worked well for them. So that's it in a nutshell. So again, we're launching in about 2 weeks in a beta, and then we'll probably launch on the App Store end of September. And then we'll continue, but obviously we'll be continually iterating throughout the process and probably for the rest of our lives on this thing. So, I think we can talk a little bit about that during the Fireside Chat, but, that gives you a little bit background and hopefully insight into what we're building.
Great. Thank you, Xan. So our next speaker is Marie. She is a mental health and well-being entrepreneur, and she's the founder of MindStead.
Hi, everyone. Really nice to be here today. I was just excited to hear about ONTRAC. Really cool, especially all the tracking at the end. I am here to talk about MindStead, and I am also going to share my screen if I can. Nope. 1 second. Hold on. I'm not sure why it's not appearing. There we go. So I am here to talk about MindStead, and MindStead is a marketplace of personal growth tools, kind of like an Etsy, but instead of looking for, you know, a handmade scarf or earrings, you're actually looking for mental fitness tools. And so I wanted to first walk you through how I came to the idea and the concept, and then walk you through 2 iterations of the product. So just for why we got where we did, my background is I spent most of the last decade working for a chain of schools, and I was really interested in the thoughts we put around social emotional learning. And when I left that organization, I was really interested in that broader space, including for adults. And when every news story, it feels like, talks about the mental health crisis going on, I just got more and more interested about it. Even before Corona, 1/3 of Americans had either clinical levels of depression or anxiety. And now, between the pandemic, all the racial injustice, all the political instability, economic instability, there's so much going on that's making things harder for people. And when you talk to them, they kind of think that help's either actionable, like a one-on-one therapist or something really specific, but you have to really commit to it and spend a lot of time and money for it. And they're like kind of nervous about committing, or it's affordable, but it's like inspirational and fun, but you not very actionable. Like you don't really know what to do with it. And they don't really know the range of options available. There's like hundreds of different types of therapy. There's hundreds of different kinds of coaching, different personalities, and people just don't really know they exist. Which leads us to problem number 2, which is the practitioners, which has been really interesting to get to know. It's a field where you enter it because you really want to help a lot of people, but the amount of people you can help is really limited by the hours in your week. It's almost impossible to see more than 30 patients in a week, and very few people actually see that many because burnout is very real. And a lot of people are also like spoke about how your financials are also limited based on the number of people you see per week, unless you really raise your fees. And most people don't want to do that. Most people would actually rather serve even lower income clients. However, they have their bills to pay. A lot of them did get a PhD, and there's a lot of money involved. And then lastly, a lot of the ability to create passive income streams really require a lot of marketing. And it's basically what no psychologist ever signed up for. It's never mentioned in all like the years you go to a PhD. And so they're looking for help to figure out, how do I get my voice out there? And so there was this real opportunity of like, how do we get the voices of a much bigger width of practitioners out there in terms of background, experience, and also the modalities they provide? And how do we make it easy for people to search and quickly browse different methods and take that kind of first walk around the block to explore it, to get started in the personal growth journey? And honestly, the hope for MindStead is that as people start, because our materials are more like educational small pieces, that they'll actually start pursuing more work one-on-one. And so this is the idea. It took us a couple months to get the initial site up, which is the site that's up live right now. If you go to mindstead.org, it's very much like an MVP, very simple, not super pretty. My sister did a bunch of drawings, but everything works really well. You can explore all of the tools we have. You'll see that right now we have 156 tools by about 50 different practitioners. And you can search for a topic. You can either sort and look for, you know, what are the tools that are about stress, emotions, and self-care. Or you can search and, you know, find tools on anger or whatever you're having that moment. And then it's pretty easy to go in there, you know, read more about the tool. You can read more about the person that developed the tool. When you see the tool, you not only see about the tool, but also why it works. So this one's based on cognitive behavioral therapy. If you then decide to purchase a tool, it's super easy, kind of like an Etsy. You put it in your cart, appears in your cart. Now we can just go and check out, and really quick checkout process. And then you get the tool, which I had here, this anger one. You get it for download pretty quickly. This one talks about like thinking back to times you felt angry. There was essentially like a SWOT analysis. This practitioner let me share this tool, which is why it's here, and kind of planning going forward. And so the cost of this tool, if we went back, was only less than $3. So it becomes really easy for someone to try it and see, does cognitive behavioral therapy, is that an approach I even like? And if they like it, hopefully they'll get a microdose of some support on the spot, and then they can also pursue more stuff with cognitive behavior therapy as a method going forward, or they can even find a therapist who specializes on that. So like I said, this is the current site that has been in oh shoot, I switched. So this is the, oh no. So this was the current, the original site that was our MVP that's out now. And hopefully in about 2 weeks, we'll launch with our brand new site, which as you see is a lot prettier. Most of the functionality worked fine in our original site. We've improved a bit of it and then just really extended to have a lot more content to have people see how MindStead works, how it fits into your life, and still have all the categories, still have the ability to explore all the tools, but it's prettier right now, and our search system has improved a little bit. Yeah, and you can even see the pictures aren't showing up right now, but it's just like a nicer layout. And I thought it was actually kind of cool to share this and talk about it today when we're talking about developing a product and kind of going to your MVP, spending like a couple months testing it, seeing if people are even showing up. We were really fortunate that we were getting new practitioners and we were getting new customers every day, which made it make sense to invest more into just improving some of the functionality and a lot of the appearance of the site. And that's it. If you have any questions that I don't answer today, you're very welcome to email me at marie@mindstead.org. And you can see the website and follow us at MindStead on all social. I think that's it.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you. So now I want to just segue to our fireside chat between Xan and Marie and I. I'm going to actually go through a few overlaying questions. Questions pertaining to the concept, your how you selected your teams to help develop your tool and your application, and how you're capturing feedback. I just want us to have a conversation, and I definitely know that I have other questions that aren't on my list, so I'm going to open up the Q&A pretty quickly and just go through first concept. So I would like to know, do you have any suggestions for us? All of us on here are looking to learn about how to further develop our products, or maybe start if they haven't already. So I just wanted to know if you used any type of formula, and if you gathered a list of must-dos or don'ts when building out your concept. Like, what have you learned so far in this at the stages that you're at? I know you're both still early, we all are, but if you have any must-dos or must-don'ts that you can think of when you're developing your concept.
I can start a little bit. So as you could see, we actually started with the wireframe prototype, which I would 100% recommend. So we started outsource. I actually have a CTO coming on, but we outsource, and so Iron Forge, Ian's with Iron Forge, so that's the firm that we went with. So that was their process. They wouldn't move forward without doing the wireframe first, which I thought was very cool in retrospect. But a couple things I can say, more so what we did with the wireframe, that I think, I'm not gonna say best practices, but I think really gave me a lot of insights. So number one is, I built a landing page from this, and, I have an expertise in digital marketing. So I ran some Facebook ads to this, and that's how, we got a good chunk of the 400 from there. But what was more important is, if you're familiar with Facebook advertising, you test out different audiences. And so what was interesting to me is I tested about 30 different audiences. And some audiences, as you would expect, converted at a much higher rate than those than others. And so that actually gave me a lot of insight into who our target market was. And it was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, it ended up being about 45 to 65-year-olds, the younger audience. I think we can eventually get the younger audience, but I think kind of the early adopters would be, that group. And also we found that kind of people that were interested in just health goals or just financial goals weren't as interested. And so that was actually a little bit of a surprise to me. It was people that were taking a more holistic approach. And actually in retrospect, it made more sense, but it was a little surprise to me. And then in addition to that, I did, once people signed up, I tried to talk to as many people as I could, walking through the wireframe. And I got a lot of insights as well there. And one that was interesting is a lot of them actually had kind of a life event, like a divorce or going through addiction recovery, some event that caused them to kind of want to, hit the reset button and kind of become the best version of themselves, so to speak. And so that was an aha moment as well for me. So I would say that process had a lot of value, and I think it validated and made me more comfortable with making the investment to build out the actual full on app.
Got it. That's great. Thank you, Xan.
Super cool. I haven't actually, MindStead has done zero advertising so far. So it's actually been crazy that all of our customers have come to us organically. And so I'm excited to start advertising once the new site is launched. For our path, you kind of saw the two versions. Before all of that, I did talk to probably 100 or 200 therapists or coaches, as well as probably like 50-ish consumers that were strangers. I probably talked to like 100 people from my life that I've ever met also, but some strangers, to really understand kind of who would be interested in this and why, because there are so many options right now for mental health and like what's missing for people. And so we were looking to focus on really that kind of like when you go to run a marathon, if you've never exercised, they say the first thing is to take a walk around the block. So we very much thought about like, what's the first walk around the block for mental fitness? And maybe you don't like running, you could play basketball, you can swim. With mental fitness things, people kind of think there's therapy or there's coaching and that's it. They don't realize that therapy has like hundreds of different types of therapy. Plus, if you put in the practitioner and their personality and their style, it changes a lot. And so we wanted to make sure that people saw just kind of how much range there is. So like, if you don't like running, go swimming. If you don't like cognitive behavioral therapy, try family relations, try meditation, try something else. Like they all work for anxiety. You just have to figure out what works for you. And so I'd say we spent a lot of time on that part, and then a chunk of time concepting the site and trying to figure out what are the categories to help people search within the tools. Right now, we don't have very many tools, but hopefully we'll be at that Etsy point of hundreds of thousands, and that's really overwhelming for people. So how do you bracket into categories? How do you have both the filters in the column as well as search to help people navigate it? And so far, they're not super used. People are mostly scrolling through the pages because we don't have that many tools, but you can see when someone has something specific in mind, they're kind of going there. Yeah, I think that's been it. And a lot of experimenting with social media and how to grow an Instagram account. So that's a whole nother conversation.
And Marie, do you mind sharing, like you're about to launch a new website? So, and I know you were saying earlier, you're elevating that site. Was there any lessons you gained from your old site that you're applying to the new one?
Yes. So there is, I think, focusing more on search than the filters at this stage was important, and changing around what the headlines were on top for quick searches. So those are different this go around than before. So I think in terms of usability, those were the biggest parts. The other one is like, I feel like everyone always says, just get something scrappy up there and see how people respond. And if you look at Airbnb's original site, it's basically like a blog. And so I wanted something really fast and out there just to see, like, would people even just randomly come here? If it's like, and like I said, we didn't really advertise. We just kind of wanted to see what would happen. and people were coming, and then trying to talk to them, and all the practitioners I was contacting, mostly because it's a marketplace, you've got like the chicken and the egg of market demand and supply, mostly have been focused on practitioners, and then talking to them about what they see with the site. And it was interesting that we are in such a different time frame than we were when Airbnb started like 10 years ago, that the site was a little too MVP, I think, for people. And so they did want something a little bit prettier just for credibility. Similarly, the Instagram account seemed to be a thing for credibility. When we just had like 100 followers, it was like, oh, are you even a company? And I was like, oh, interesting. And so we've invested a lot in Instagram, where we get really few site clicks from Instagram. But when I talk to a practitioner, they're like, oh, I saw your Instagram, you have a couple thousand followers.
Oh, wow.
And so, and it's an interesting thing that it's the things that I feel like legitimize you now are pretty different than they were 10 years ago. At least, I was reading like best of what did Airbnb do, what did Etsy do, and some of them are just a little bit different now.
Great, thanks. So I just want to also ask a little bit, get some conversation going about team. Like, how did you determine the right people to work with for your products? Or what tools are you using to develop these products? Or like your project management tools, your system tools, if you don't mind sharing. Or
I can go first because I'll be really short. It's just me the whole time. And I did hire someone to make the website. And at first I tried to do work with a company that does kind of like pre-made marketplaces, and you just kind of input your own stuff. And that was a learning to me, because I signed up with them after a phone call where I discussed everything I needed. And then once I signed up, everything I needed was extras. And so what I really needed was digital downloads and rating were like the two harder things. And they didn't exist in some of the packaged sites, which were more focused on like mailing goods if you go to like one of these pre-made marketplaces. And so then I went and I had to actually build out the site, which is beyond my ability. And I hired someone that's like connected to someone that I used to work with, which was kind of easy. And then he did it kind of on nights because he had other work that he was doing. And so when he started having not enough time, then I found another team to do it. And I actually found them through Upwork. And it's been slower going than I'd like, but it's working out pretty well. And for right now, because we are so early and growing, it's mostly a lot of me doing outreach one-on-one to practitioners and trying to get involved in groups that work on this space. And then I'm hoping that probably next year in 2021, we'll hire someone to kind of help, particularly with the community aspect. But for now, just me.
Yeah. Do you use any project management tools?
I don't. I'm like very big on just super basic like Google tools. So like Google Calendar, huge. Oh, I guess I do use like Calendly. So when I talk to practitioners, they kind of schedule themselves. And then I do a lot with just spreadsheets and tracking projects that I'm doing there. Both, I just don't want to spend any more money because as I said, it's just me. There's no investors. I don't have that much money. And so just trying to minimize costs. And
got it.
Yeah, so far it's working.
Okay, thanks, Marie. How about you, Xan?
Yeah, so let me talk about the team part first. And I think there's a couple elements to it. I think that what's also interesting in my case, I can kind of give some insights because I've had business partners before and I've approached this business very differently. And I think I have some insights there that I can share. So I first started out single co-founder and outsourcing the development. And as I mentioned, one thing that was nice is the firm that I work with, it was part of their process to not build right away, that you have to go through this wireframe process. One, to provide clarity into what the product is, but also it's kind of like that dating period where it's like, okay, do we want to work with each other? Let's not dive into a huge project before, they might not like me anymore, as much as the opposite. And so that was really a good opportunity where it was relatively low cost compared to the app build out to really get a feel for, okay, can I work with these guys? And so obviously since I moved forward with the app, I felt pretty good with that. But as I got further and further into the process, I realized that I wanted kind of some people on my team, that were more from an owner side. And it was nothing because of the development firm. I think it was just a function of, hey, I need someone that's, that I can talk to around the clock. And, I'm not paying, I'm not paying the firm to be that person. And then also understanding, okay, strategically, what are we doing long term? And then to be able to translate that from a technical standpoint and from a marketing standpoint. So actually I'm bringing on a CTO and a CMO co-founder. And so a couple things there. So in the past, I've had partners where it's been, two people that was like, hey, we have an idea, let's start a business together. So there was no strategy behind it. There was no, okay, here's the skill sets that we need, let's go find those people. It was two guys talking around, having beers, and then all of a sudden we're business partners. And, candidly, most, if not all of those partnerships did not end well. And so what happened a little bit differently this time was I kind of identified, hey, I want some co-founders and I want a CTO and I want a CMO, and I've got a marketing background, but there's been some storytelling challenges with this product. People, when they understand it, get it, but it takes a little bit longer to get it. And so we need to shrink that timeline down, right? Like I'm not going to be able to do a full demo every time to sell this app, right? It's just not scalable. And so that's where I wanted someone to come on and be the CMO. So from a technology standpoint, Jim's actually on the call, but he's a little camera shy. So he's got an AI background. He's got 20 years of background on there. And then on the marketing side, Angela, who's not on the call, she's got 15 years of brand management experience for consumer products and technology products. And so what's really nice is, that's a really well-rounded team. And I'm going to be focusing more on fundraising and a few other things as well. But it's a really well-rounded team. And I think I'm also very lucky that both individuals, and I think this meant a lot to me, that they both volunteered to say, hey, let's test this out for a few weeks, or, actually it's coming up in a month, but we're going to formalize it soon, where, I had them sign non-disclosures, but we basically acted like co-founders, and we got to see, okay, how do we work well together? Are our visions aligned? Do our personalities align? Do our work styles align? And it was a really good experience. And so I've never done it that way. And so, I think, obviously, come talk to me in 2 years. But I think, it's because it was so different. I think there was a lot of takeaways where, again, I don't know if I've got it, hit the nail on the head exactly, but I think it was a much better, more strategic approach to building the team out than I've done in the past.
Great. That's good.
One thing to add when I was hearing Xan talk, one thing that really helped me that I would super recommend to founders, if you're a sole founder, is to find other founders, even if they're in a completely different world. It almost helps if they're in a completely different world. Like one of my friends has like a baby hair care line. One does meal plans for college kids. But what's been really helpful is, like, for lack of coworkers, to establish someone else who at least understands business and have like a regular call with them, so that one, you just get better fodder if you kind of tell them your ideas out loud and they kind of respond to you, and then it keeps you from going crazy. Yeah. Because it's a lot of time by yourself. Yeah. So wanted to throw that in. I think that's probably the most important, best thing that I've done.
Great. And do y'all have any system suggestions? I'm going to open up the conversation because I know people may have some burning questions, but do you have any recommendations on the types of systems that we should look into or not, or stay away from, or anything like that?
The only one I can kind of recommend, we actually have a couple different systems, eventually I think we'll probably consolidate, but I personally use Asana, and then there's a free version of Asana that I project manage the crap out of myself. I mean, I've got washing the dishes and taking out the garbage. I have the whole, day to an hour mapped out. Wow. But that's been a really helpful tool to keep me really, really efficient and just be able to kind of map out, okay, well, Tuesday's getting jammed up. Let me reschedule that to Wednesday. Jim, as we're building out the product roadmap, Jim has us using Taskade. which kind of allows us to kind of keep, some kind of future planning done. And, Ian is using Trello. So, we're using a couple different systems. At some point, we're probably going to, consolidate, but I don't know if that's along the lines of what you were asking.
Yeah, no, I was curious. I'm wondering which one do you like more, Asana or Trello?
I personally like Asana. I tried both out, but that's just a personal preference. I mean, they're very, even Cascade, I feel is, the concepts are very similar. I've also used Teamwork, and then there's another one I've used recently that I didn't like, that everyone loved. But yeah, but the concept is very similar.
Okay. And Task8, I never heard of that. Is Task8 like task?
Task-Aid, like Gatorade, Task-Aid.
Oh, Task8. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So I'm going to open it up. I have some questions, but I want to give everyone who's on right now an opportunity to talk. Don't want to hog the whole conversation. So if you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to chime in.
I have a question for Marie, and basically, we're obviously in a group of people that have a lot of tech orientation, and I'm wondering whether you have thought about including technologies for self-development in your offerings, as opposed to things that are more paper and pencil.
Hey, thanks for that. That's a really good question. I wanted to focus on paper and pencil as well as video and audio. It's basically anything you can download because of this goal of making it like the equivalent of a first walk around the block. When I've talked to people, they felt a bit like even downloading a free app feels like a commitment, because all of a sudden you have this new app and like you're going to forget about it and use it. And they basically want something they could use almost immediately to kind of get a quick fix and then to kind of deliberate on afterwards. That's not to say that there isn't an opportunity to do almost like a marketplace of trial and error of a lot of the mental fitness apps that are out there. I feel like that could totally be an opportunity. For me and my other endeavors, I've explored a lot of different technology solutions for things. And I think it depends where someone is in the kind of pipeline of mental fitness. And if you're looking for kind of what you feel like is repairing things, or if you're looking for almost like higher performance, as well as how much work you've done in the space and how comfortable you are on it, kind of wherever you are in all those pieces, you're kind of ready for different things. And I am the most interested in people who, have anxiety, but have not done much with it besides follow a couple inspirational Instagram people and maybe read a self-help book. But, I want to be that kind of first step for them. And for a lot of them, they're not quite ready for a full app commitment.
I see. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick follow-on question to that? So it's a good question. I still need to go look at your site, but so you're saying it's mostly just tools? Because if I think about a mental health support system, it's anywhere from, like you said, the paper and so forth, to the apps, to the also matching with the practitioners. So do you also have a match with the practitioners if people are interested? And is there like any sort of a feature for the practitioners to include their links to blogs or something more about them?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think like there's a couple ways where MindStead can eventually evolve. One of those could be more direct matching. Right now, from everything I've seen and talked to people, there's actually quite a lot of matching sites or searching sites to find a therapist. Like the most like well-known is Psychology Today, but there's probably like 20 to 30 that are relatively popular. So if you add in the unpopular ones, you can get a lot. If you actually go to the FAQs on my site, you can actually see some of these, because I encourage, if someone's ready, like go for it, find someone. right now we don't do that, and we're focused more on like the educational side of getting comfortable and not ready. There's a lot more pieces about really working on mental health that have a lot more like legality and stuff involved, and so we want to remain more of like an education start around the block resources rather than getting into like deep therapy and like very clinical issues. We're more interested in kind of acute things and walk around the block. However, when you do buy a tool, just kind of like I showed you, you can see who made it. So the practitioner, and a number of them link their websites or more information about them. So if you really like a tool, you could see who it is and potentially you can contact them. Like most of their links are there about doing sessions or further work. Or if you like them but they're not open to it, you can at least see like what do they study, what type of therapy, what type of coaching are they, where did they get certified, so you can find someone probably with a similar style. So it's not a direct matching, but you could use it kind of as a roundabout way for that. And I know a number of therapists who have joined for kind of different reasons. Some of them are like, I have so much student debt to pay off, I'm just taking on like $500 an hour, like CTO's kids, and I don't feel like I'm helping the world at all in the way I wanted to. I would love to do this so I can create tools for like the mother working 2 jobs, like who can only get to tools on Saturday. So like that's a batch of practitioners. We also have a batch who are like new to their practice, don't have fully filled out slots and have all these ideas that they want to present in tools, and also they want to use them as like a sales tool basically to bring people to their practice. So it's like the whole gamut of motivations for practitioners, while for people it's much more specific of like, I'm tired of feeling shitty and I want something. And it could be like, I'm feeling anxious. It could be like, I'm constantly communicating badly with my partner. It could be like, I don't even know my direction in life because I don't know my values. And you want just like, we're just small tools for whatever you're kind of looking at, just to become the best version of you in a small step. And then we're happy for you to go on onwards. The market here is so big. We just want to focus on getting people kind of into the funnel and eventually to all the other places.
So you're mindstead.org,
Mm-hmm.
and the business model is still a marketplace though. So do you take a percentage of the, okay, so is it like a hybrid?
No, you don't need to be a nonprofit to have a .org, and the .com was taken.
Okay. Okay.
And between the .org and the .co, which I do also own, I like tested it with some people and they preferred the idea of the org. And the social mission is so built in for us. Like if people are buying tools, but they're not feeling like they're learning something from them and like starting their journeys, like I feel like we're failing, even if we're financially successful. So I think being an org is a totally good place for us.
So is there any sort of like membership or anything for practitioners, or do they just?
So a lot of marketplaces in general, you pay to be a member to list tools. And then sometimes even once you're a member, you pay to list tools. For us, it's free to join, it's free to list tools, and we keep a percentage of the sales, and only when they're sold.
Great. Thank you. That's great.
Thanks.
Marie, could you also share a little bit more about the community piece? You said that you're going to build out a community, and I was just wondering what you envision for that. What is that going to look like?
Yes. So there's 2 places that we're looking to build, and when I say we, it's just me, but it makes me feel better. So there's 2 places where I'm looking to build a community. One is with practitioners, especially now during COVID. I don't know if you have any friends that are therapists and coaches, but the burnout rates have increased. And it's because you used to be in practice and see like 6 or 7 clients a day, but one was there with marital issues, one had career issues, one had anxiety, one had some childhood trauma, and it was like pretty diverse. And now everyone's been talking about basically the same thing all day, every day. And when the workday ends, you walk 2 feet to your kitchen and you're faced with the same issues. And so they're facing a lot more burnout. And for many of them, even people who are quite young, like they might still even be in their 30s, when they went to school 15 years ago, a lot of the issues people are suffering with right now weren't as big of didn't really exist. Like cell phone addiction was not a thing 15 years ago. The rise of porn addiction, the rise of meta level things like meta level anxiety, where you're anxious about being anxious, or you're depressed about being depressed, or you can't focus because you can't focus. Those have all been really on the rise, and some practitioners are looking for more people to talk to them about. Some of them naturally work in a group practice, or have like their couple of friends that they went to school with, or maybe they'll meet someone while doing continuing ed classes, but some of them are looking for more of a discussion. And then some of them are also looking for more of a discussion on how to grow their passive income, because you don't go to marketing school generally when you go to coaching or psychology school. So there's like a number of needs there. And then I was also interested in just the people who are taking these tools and trying to get started and kind of doing more encouragement. And so them, I'm less sure completely what we'll do with, because there's that fine line of how are you supportive and educational, but like we are not therapy, like no one in the group can provide therapy. So how do you just cheer someone on? And for both of them, there's a Facebook group created. They're both private, so you have to like request to come in. And just trying to get that going. That's only like a couple weeks old right now.
Great. I have one more question on feedback, but I want to check in and make sure there's no other questions out in our audience. Does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I will wrap it up with our last question for the both of you. I know you all kind of touched on, you've been capturing feedback from people who you've interviewed and kind of explored in terms of customers. So I just wanted for you to highlight like what tools you're using to capture that feedback, or what processes. I know Xan, you mentioned ads was a number one way for you to do that, and Marie, you said you did some interviews. I just wanted to hear if you have any suggestions on capturing feedback on your features of what you're using, what tools or strategies or any kind of suggestions you want to reiterate in terms of getting feedback on your products.
One thing I could share, I mean, I just took, when I did customer interviews, I just took notes on Microsoft Word. So nothing there. But one thing that actually was pretty helpful was on my landing page early on. It's called Hum Commerce, but I think there's other ones as well that basically are screen recorders. So basically we could see as people were coming to the landing page, we actually had a slider with all the different screenshots. And so what was interesting is, what was really valuable is we could see, Ian, I think I remember, if you remember, I shared some of the recordings with you where we could see, okay, someone was sliding, and then would go back to one screen. And then we could see they were spending a lot of time on that one screen. And so that actually gave us a lot of insights as far as, okay, what was important to them? Like what might've been kind of, what were they trying to figure out? And just based on their activity and behavior on the screens, it actually, I think gave us a lot of insights into, what was important and what they were, what was kind of connecting with them. And then that was validated with the one-on-one interviews as well.
Cool. Is that called Hub Slider?
It's Hum Commerce, HUM Commerce, COMMERCE. But I think I got that like on one of those like Groupon type deals. I didn't. I'll be honest, I don't think I vetted it at all. So, but there's plenty of tools like that. I don't know if any of my tech guys have anything like that. But I mean, it was actually pretty helpful for me to get that insight.
Well, one thing Xan didn't mention as well is in the actual app, we are tracking a bunch of different events. So there's things like Google Tag Manager, or HubSpot is the one that we use, there's Active Campaign. There's a bunch of different things, whether they're direct mailing softwares or not, that are really, really, really helpful. But HubSpot inside the app, things like when you enroll in a program, when you complete tracks or tasks, or if you're doing certain things or you're not doing certain things in another aspect, all of that information is really important to try to get an understanding of who that user is, and then how the app can help that user be better at using the app, or using the app more effectively and efficiently. We have something like 7 integrations with 50 something endpoints and pieces of data that we're tracking and whatnot. So getting this really full understanding of a user and how they approach the app, but also approach their goals, right, is extraordinarily important. So these integrations and these tools, to do that kind of user level tracking is really important as well.
We're also using a mixed panel as well. I forgot about that. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're at 6:01. So I don't know if anyone has any other questions.
I'm happy to stay on for a couple more minutes if anyone does. If not, I'll also be fine. Go ahead.
All right. Well, go ahead. Go ahead, Catherine. Sorry.
Sorry. I just want to explain. I just posted a link to a guy I've known for years who's a serial entrepreneur. I haven't been engaged with his site, but given that everybody's founders and kind of in a similar space, this is it's called Founders First System, and it's for a community. It's free for a community of entrepreneurs who are experiencing any kind of mental health issues. And this is a guy who, like, every time he started a company, had similar issues, whether they flopped or they were successful. Some of them were the same. And, he just basically ducked out of the world for almost 2 years and then kind of emerged and started talking to other entrepreneurs who had had a lot of burnout or other issues while they were building their companies. And so he's created this big community. So it might be a great place for, solopreneurs, but also, in your market, in a sense, for an exchange. So you can check it out.
Thanks, Catherine, for sharing. Do you mind sharing like those tracking tools that you're using for your app or Xan? Like you guys said, HubSpot, mixed panel. What are some other ways that you're using to track what your users are doing on your app?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different. I got to jump here in a second, but there's a bunch of different ones. There's two different main types of software that I mean, there's plenty, but analytics and data software are two different things, right? Data software actually looks at your database and then the data that you're gathering within your software. There's a ton of things like that. And then there's analytics software, which is actually based on usage, how much time somebody spends, when did they come back to it, what are they doing? And then you can do things like an active campaign, which is or MailChimp, right? They're basically the same concept. It's like a mailing list thing, which you can add what's called automations, where if let's say you have the API in your actual app, right, you can set different events. So just key value stuff like, hey, this person did X and the value that they produced was Y, and it goes up to the little cloud, and then you on your side, without doing any programming, right, can say, okay, well, when this happens, I want to wait 1 day, and then I want to send this email, and then if this event happens, then I want to, wait 1 day, I want to do this email instead. So you can actually create like really complicated either drip campaigns or customer tracking in terms of the various usage reports or whatever it is, to try to understand not only how your users are using the product as a like product manager, right, but also to re-engage people who may not be engaged, to try to, whether it's like cart abandonment is a big issue, right, or just app abandonment in general. I think it's something like 90% of the apps that you download, you delete immediately, right? You go through the onboarding sequence, you say, this is not for me, and delete it within the first day, right? Yeah. So you want to be able to see what the customer drop-off rate is. There's just thousands of different, ways to cut the pie to try to understand your customer. But HubSpot mixed panel is a great one for sure. HubSpot mixed panel, active campaign, MailChimp. I mean, there's so many different things, and each one has their own little niche.
Got it. Great. Well, thanks so much for sharing. This is some good information. I appreciate everyone for coming on and joining us. We're going to have our next session again, September 15th. The Washington, D.C. chapter will be sponsoring Entrepreneur Essentials on your customer and brand development. And again, thank you all for coming on. Thank you so much, Xan and Marie, for speaking and sharing your story. We enjoyed it very much. And this video will be up soon. So feel free to check it out later. But you all have a good afternoon, or good evening rather, and thanks for joining.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.